Okay, so now let's try to understand the meaning of principal curvatures. So what we do is we approximate the surface at least around a point by a non-surface and see, try to understand what is the meaning of the principal curvatures. So this requires approximation. That's what essentially done. So first let us start with sigma from U to S be a surface patch to start with, and of course let us fix a point. But then what you do is we translate the surface. We want to study at some point P. Any point you can take, but you can translate it by translating it into origin. Assume that. So the point that we want to study, we translate it to the origin. So you just assume that this is on the surface to start with. So we are going to study the behavior at that point. That's quite easy. If P is the point that you want, then what you do, you take S minus P. So this is a translation, and therefore it is an isometry. So the no change in the geometric behavior. So you can always take, instead of P we take 0 0 because it corresponds to 0 0 if you apply this translation. That's the first thing that you do. Now next thing that we do is, so you have the surface, you have this point which you have translated to the origin. So now you rotate the first tilt it to, by rotating the I want two things, in fact two rotations in that, rotating the surface, whole R3 you can rotate it so that the tangent plane at this point. So now this is, if you want to call this S1, I don't want to keep changing the sign, but S itself, but geometrically they are same. Now again we rotate, it may be tilted like this, rotate it so that the tangent plane coincides with the XY. Already it's at the origin, our point is origin. Now you slightly tilt it to ensure that the tangent plane coincides with the XY plane. XY plane, okay. That's the second step. That's not enough. Now we do something more, okay. So that is let kappa 1, these two are unchanged by this translation or even by the rotation because both are isometry. So it doesn't make any difference to first fundamental form, second fundamental form or anything, okay. So because it preserves inner product, cross product, that's enough. These are the two things involved in finding out your first and second fundamental form, because normal is obtained by using cross product, but isometry is preserved cross product also. So this doesn't change. Let kappa 1, kappa 2 be the principal curvatures at this point, which now we translated to 0 0, and T1. So this is where I have to be a little more careful. So too many notations I don't want. So the vector I am going to write like this, T1 and T2. I put an underline for the vector because sometimes you need to this. T1, T2 are the principal directions or the principal vectors. They are the unit principal vectors. I mean this, there are choices because at both directions you have two unit vectors choice. But they are orthogonal to each other, so in each direction you will have two. So you can fix any one of them and work with that. Principal vectors. I mean the eigenvectors. So that's what is called the principal vectors, eigenvectors. Unit eigenvectors. Okay. So now again we make a small rotation to the surface. Rotate the surface so that, so this choice also, be a little careful in case you need to change the choice so that T1 corresponds to the 1 0 0 and T2 corresponds to, what I mean is that coincides to the second vector. So this is the x-axis vector, this is the y-axis. So your tangent plane now coincided and you get T1 and T2. Choose in such a way that if T1, T2 doesn't work, then you choose accordingly so that you rotate. Now the whole surface is rotated so that your T1 coincides with the x-axis, T2 coincides with the y-axis. So you will get these principal vectors. Okay, so that's the second part of it that we do. So now let me write this, but remember all this we have done on the tangent plane. Okay, so now let me write. So okay, so then let's go with this. T1 actually equal to let me write this because this is a tangent vector. So accordingly, after changing sigma, because all these isometries are applied here, so one translation and one rotation, so I am not rewriting. So this sigma is chosen in such a way that, I mean, you will add those translation and rotation that is required to do that. So T1 can be written, this vector T1 can be written as T11 sigma u plus T12 sigma v, because it's a tangent vector. So now this sigma, sigma, because we have applied two things, one translation and couple of rotations, apply that. So it will be some other sigma. So I am not going to rewrite it and change sigma accordingly. We are not taking another sigma, no, we are taking the same sigma except that we apply this translation, so it will be sigma minus p when you get into this, and then there are two rotations. So you will have another sigma prime, which I don't want to change the notation, is too much. Okay, so this is what you are going to get, but this is in the x-axis 1 0 0, but as a tangent vector it will be something else. So now the tangent plane coincides with x-axis and T1 coincides with this vector, but as a tangent vector, it is going to be a linear combination of sigma u and sigma v, which I am writing, which is not 1 0. So this could even be written as 1 0 0 in the xy plane. Okay, and T2 as a vector is going to be again write T21 sigma u plus T22 sigma v, and this is your 0 1 0. Okay, so now, all right, we have written that. So let us write an arbitrary vector. So then let's write it. Then x, y, any because now we want to visualize the whole thing as on xy plane. Your sigma is a surface, but now we want to look at what happens in R3, in our standard coordinate system, how it comes back. So that is what we are trying. So therefore, we are going to write this surface as graph of some function. That's the idea on R3. We cannot get it absolutely, we will get approximate. So let us write the xy0. What is xy0? So that is going to be x times this plus y times 0, 1, 0. And what is that going to be? X times t1 plus y times t2. I keep writing this because I will be changing that later. Okay. So let us write down what will be that. Now we have it very clearly. X times t11 sigma u plus t12 sigma v plus y times t21 sigma u plus t22 sigma v, and that is equal to, of course, as vectors now we will write it as linear combination of sigma u sigma v. So what is the coefficient of sigma u? X t11 plus y t21 sigma u plus x t12 plus y t22 sigma v. Okay, so that is what we have got. Okay, so this is your vector x. So very neatly we have written any arbitrary vector on the xy plane. Now we can write like this, and this I am going to write it as s sigma u plus t sigma v, another notation. Okay, so now we write it in coordinate form because coordinate form is very important for us. So let me now why this thing is written. Now I am going to write t1. Okay, maybe I will write it this. So what will you get as coordinates? S comma t, st is equal to, I am going to write the coefficients because of uniqueness. Because of uniqueness, your s is going to be this and t is going to be this, because both are written as linear combination of sigma u and sigma v, they are unique. So your s is going to be x t11. You can write two equations, then you can put them together like this, plus y t21, and t is equal to x t12 plus y t2, and that can be written as x. So we will split it into two, one t11 t12. You can see that this is the coefficients coming out of t1, the coefficient of look at this t1, okay, plus y times, and this guy is t21 t22. That's good. Okay, so we have got this. We are going to write, for simplicity we will write this as x. I will write t1 without underline, without that vector notation. So this is you need coefficient with respect to this to take do any computation using first fundamental form or second fundamental form. First fundamental form will give you the dot product. If you want to compute t1 dot t2 dot, take this, then apply t1 t2 transpose f1 t1 t2, and that's going to give you the dot product. Similarly, or either ti1 ti2 and so on. So this getting into coordinates with respect to sigma u sigma v is important for computation purpose. So which you can use using your first and second fundamental form. First one gives you dot product, second one gives you the normal curvature. Okay, so that's what we are trying. Plus, so these coefficients are now it is useful for computation. This is y. If you want, I can write that and tell you how you get it. So where T1 is that T11, T12 and T2 is equal to T21, T22. See, but I can tell you this we have seen. See, because we know. I mean, I don't know why should I repeat, but I'll repeat it again. Ti dot Tj. Many times I have done this. Ti dot Tj. Any one of them. That's the same as Ti1, Ti2, F1. This is what I said. Tj1, Tj2, and that's actually delta Ij because it's orthonormal. Your vectors T1 and T2, this is going to be, if you want I can write that and then write. Now see, look, this time I'm going to write underline. Dot Tj, this is the standard dot product in R3. And you know that they are orthonormal, so you get delta Ij. So what is important is this. It's not this. This guy. Converting into the coefficients of sigma using sigma u, sigma v. So you have ordered pairs, and then using F1 you get dot product. Similarly, and we also know kappa n is equal to each direction. So in particular, these particular directions, kappa I, this is kappa 1 and kappa 2. So that's the normal curvatures in that direction. Kappa I is equal to Ti1, Ti2, F2, Ti1, Ti2. So this is, of course, this is going to be kappa T1, etc., etc. You must have done. So that's, so for any, what is that vector, you want to find out the normal curvature in the tangent vector direction. What you do, you write it using, as coefficients of, take the coefficient of sigma u and sigma v. So that is St, then St, F2, St. That is the normal curvature in the direction of S sigma u, T sigma v. So that's, this is, of course, we have seen this. And this is not very difficult because in these base directions, what is this going to be? F2 is going to be kappa I, F1. So kappa is taken out. Then what is the inner product of this? F1 T is 1. So you get kappa I. But this formula is true generally. Any normal curvature you can do. And in particular, principal directions, this comes directly, very easily. So now we are going to write these things. Okay, so this equation is very, very important. Okay. Now let us look at the surface. A point on the surface would look something like this in the coordinate. So this could be, if you want to find out this, x and y are on the xy plane, we know how to manage that. You have to get the third coordinate. And that will tell you, given xy, what is your third coordinate. This is the idea. So how do we do? So what we do is this, this point, you call this some sigma, some point st, okay? So that's what we are going to do. Any point on the surface will be of this form. So now we are going to apply the Taylor's theorem, okay? Taylor's theorem truncated at second degree. So by Taylor's theorem, so what do you get? Of course, expanded at the origin, that's where your tangent plane lies. Sigma st is equal to sigma, assuming, of course, this is something that we should do it in the beginning. Sigma 0, 0 is mapped to that point origin, okay? So if necessary, in U also you make a slight translation. So that also doesn't affect the geometry. Sigma 0, 0 plus S times sigma u plus T T times sigma V, that's the first degree term, plus, this is the Taylor series I am writing, half S square sigma UU plus twice ST sigma UV plus the last one is T square sigma VV plus this is the first degree term, the 0th degree, first degree, this is the second degree. The remaining things are all third degree onwards terms. We ignore them. I just keep it to say that this equality works only if you put that. So these are assumed to be, this will be 1 by 3 factorial, all these kinds of terms, S cubed sigma u, then blah 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 blah. According to this index, you will have the corresponding S, T, etc. It's expanded at 0, that's why you get only S minus 0, which is S. T minus 0, this is S minus, so you get only S square, etc. Okay, so that is what it is. Okay, so now, if this is this, then to get the Z, what do? You take your Z axis and dot product, if you want to get Z, so Z is equal to X, Y, Z dot, right? Okay, so the surface is here, so you have put this number, you want the Z coordinate, what do? You take X, Y, Z, and this is sigma ST dot product, this, so we choose our normal in such a way that, now that the tangent plane is the XY plane, your normal will be either the upward, 0, 0, 1 or 0, 0, minus 1. There are only two choices for normal. So, okay, so we can assume the normal is actually equal to 0, 0, 1. Your tangent plane is the XY plane and you are working at 0, 0, 0. So the normal is going to be either upward along Z axis or downward along Z axis. So let us take this. So in that case, so hence Z is equal to this X, Y, Z dot the normal, and what is that X, Y, Z? That is sigma ST dot the normal. Now let us assume this. From 1, let us take this. Okay, what is sigma 0, 0, 0? That is 0, 0, 0. So 0, 0, 0 dot the normal, that is 0, plus this guy S sigma u plus T sigma v dot the normal, plus, I don't have space there, so I will write here, plus the second degree terms, half S square sigma uu plus 2 st sigma u sigma u v, sigma uv is the same as sigma vu, plus T square sigma vv plus r dot n. Okay, so this, we ignore that. There is a little bit of third degree, the component in the third direction, we get it, which we completely ignore. So by ignoring this, this is approximately equal to, what is this? This is 0. What about this? S sigma u dot n is 0, because sigma u is a tangent vector and n is obviously normal, so this is going to be 0. So we have only left out this term. These two terms go, so that is equal to half. What is this going to be? Sigma uu dot, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, n plus r dot n, I'm sorry. Okay, sigma uu dot n, that is equal to L. So L S square plus, this is twice, this is m st plus, this is n t square. I wrote approximately by ignoring this. This higher degree terms we ignore. So your z is approximately equal to this number. And what is this? This we have seen many times. This is going to be s comma t f2 st. So this is, oh, half will come there. This guy is this is that vector s comma t transpose and s comma st. Now this we can write because we have already written this expression, but let me recall that. But your s comma st is actually, the vector st is equal to x t1, you remember this t1 is t11 t12 plus y. See, now we are getting back to our own notation. Our own x comma y, it has come back from s comma t2. So let us substitute. No, this will be 2 then. Substituting into we get, let's make it very, z is approximately equal to half. So let me write this, st is x t1 transpose plus y t2 transpose f2, half is outside, x t1 plus y t2. Okay, so that is equal to, let us rewrite half, let us keep outside. So this will be, there are 4 terms, x t1 transpose f2 t1 plus x t1 transpose, no, this is x square, sorry, this is xy. So t1 transpose, half is outside, t1 transpose f2 t2 plus y. So that you can take x1, okay, I will write it again, y x t2 transpose f2 t1 plus y square t2 transpose f2 t2. So that is equal to, let us write down this, x square t1 transpose, what is f2 t1? T1 is the eigenvector corresponding to kappa. So f2 t1 is actually equal to kappa f1 t1. So I can write kappa 1 f1 t1 plus xy, this is t1 transpose, again kappa 2 f1 t2 plus yx, this is kappa 1 t2 transpose f1 t1 plus y square kappa 2 t2 transpose f1 t2. And what is that? Let us see. Half. What is this? T1 transpose f1 t1 is t1 dot t1, the dot product, that's 1. So this is equal to, let me write as like this, kappa 1 x square plus, what will be this? Kappa 2 xy, t1 transpose f1 t2 is the dot product of t1 and t2, that is 0. Similarly here, the dot product of T2 and T1, that's also 0. So you will have the last term kappa 2 y square. This is the dot product of that vector T1 bar dot T2 bar dot T2 bar, and that is 1. So this is what you get. So this is beautiful because now you can write it as so sigma st is equal to sigma st is approximately the same as, let's write down, x comma y comma half is not all that significant, doesn't matter, kappa 1 x square plus kappa 2 y square. So that is what we are getting. It's just an approximately equal, but this gives you a lot of, so your sigma is approximately the same as the graph of this function around 0, which is a very standard kind of function, ax square plus by square. It is something like that, okay? So it is a standard, equation. For instance, if kappa 1 and kappa 2 are 0, it is almost like a plane. It's very close to a plane. Well, that's not correct, okay? 0 is a little tricky issue. But if kappa 1 and kappa 2 are positive, then it will be increasing on both sides. You can see both positive and yes. So for instance, if kappa 1, kappa 2 both are positive, then this looks like a paraboloid. So I mean around the point around 0. So this is it's like the graph of the function a square x square plus b square y square, because these are positive. A square x square plus b square y square, we have seen, the name given was paraboloid, elliptic paraboloid, because it may not be circular, as a square and b square may be different. So it looks like elliptic paraboloid, and such points are generally called elliptic points. Then P is, by the way, the geometric behavior at P is exactly the same as this, because at 0, because we only applied translations and rotations, which doesn't change the geometry. It's all rigidly translated, rigidly rotated, so that the surface, it's only the origin that we have kept our own creation, which we can change it to this, so you get it. Then P is called an elliptic point. Elliptic point. Yeah. If both are negative, there is no difference, because you just, what do you do? Instead of normal, we have taken in upward normal, take the normal otherward, then automatically both the curvatures become negative. So this is the problem with the whole, because this, whatever that we are doing, depends on the normal. There is still not completely independent, you can't say this principal curvatures are completely independent of your object on the surface. There is this dependency on the normal. So if both are negative, that means you are looking from the other direction, and in that case you will see it as the upward hyperbola, that paraboloid that you saw, elliptic paraboloid. If you look from the other side, it is the downward one. Okay, so that's the difference. So I don't want to discuss that. But that is very important. It also tells you that still we are not completely out of our own creations. It is not, principal curvatures are not completely dependent on the surface. It has a dependency on the normal that you choose. Parameterization, it may not depend, but it will depend on the normal that you choose. You have two normals, so both the signs get changed when you take the other normal. Okay. So on the other hand, if this is what normally you look at, if K1, K2 is positive there, that means both K1 are positive or both K1 and K2 are negative, then you will get that situation. Okay, depending upon the normal, you can get either both are positive. If you are getting both are negative, change your normal, you get both are positive. So it completely depends on the normal you choose. But now you say if they are of positive sign. So if K1 is positive and kappa 2 is negative, then what will happen? So Z is approximately equal to something like a square x square minus b square y square. So that is roughly the graph of this function. That's roughly is a what is that, parabolic, hyperbolic paraboloid. So rough is hyperbolic paraboloid. I mean, this is of behavior just around the point, and that too approximately. Okay, hyperbolic. So that's called, such points are called hyperbolic points. So P is called a hyperbolic point. Elliptic, hyperbolic, called a hyperbolic point. Don't forget, it's still only approximation. Now, third case is, so if this is irrelevant, whether it is K1 positive, K2 negative, or K1 negative, K2 positive, it will be minus a square x square plus b square y square. It's just a change of, coordinates that you talk. So that's same. So if one of them is 0 and kappa 2 is not equal to 0. Now it is positive or negative is irrelevant, because if it is positive, fine. If it is negative, you can change the normal, make it negative. So this doesn't change, but this will change it to positive. So it's irrelevant, don't worry. Then how will it look like? On one side, see, remember, let us assume this is positive so that it's easier. You know that all other normal curvatures lie between these two. So in every direction, the surface curves in this towards the normal. And in some direction it looks flat because of it goes up to 0. So that looks like a conical kind of a shape. It's not very perfectly, but on one side you have the curvature 0. Whenever it is 0, there are issues, because at a higher degree it may become something else. So the lower degree only we are looking at, only at the second degree we are looking at. Even if the second degree is 0, third degree it may bend. So there are issues. So this is going to be, we call such points, such points are called, just looking at the second degree, you know that all kappa 1 etc. are coming out of the second degree term, sigma uu, sigma uv, sigma vv. But if those are 0 and the next one becomes positive, different, then you are going to get the surface may still bend, but it will not be reflected on your principal curvatures. So such points are called parabolic. So parabolic points are typically paraboloid-like, okay, or cylinder. Cylinder is one example of paraboloid. So it will be a curve like this, okay. So cylindrical. Cylindrical I am telling because it may not be circular. It is like a cylinder of a parabola, like that's very locally. So that's the thing. But if both are 0, we can't say anything. For instance, that's what I was telling you, some examples like if you go with curves like z equal to x raised to 4 minus y raised to 4, or x raised to 4 plus y raised to 4. These kinds of curves, when you do, what happens is, locally you will not be able to get any conclusion, because this is exactly parabolic. This is parabolic. Elliptic, this will be elliptic hyperboloid. Like, because both sides it increases. But because the second degree term is going to vanish, you will have difficulty. Okay? So standard things may create problem, or z equal to x raised to 4 minus y raised to 4. It behaves very close to x square minus y square, but up to second and third degree you are always going to get everything 0, so you will have difficulty in making conclusions. So if you can do in second degree these conclusions, then we are done. But if both kappa 1 and kappa 2 equal to 0, that's what expected in this higher degree curves, then you can't make a conclusion about it, so we will not worry. Okay? So this is what roughly what we have to, so we don't make any conclusion. No conclusion can be easily made. These are the examples where can be made. You can see the difficulty there. Surfaces, as lower degree becomes higher and higher, becomes flatter and flatter. The curving starts a little later. So significant curving, these things. But behavior is exactly like x square plus y square, very close to x square plus y square and x raised to 4 plus x square minus y square. But that's not reflected on the second degree terms. And that is why, look at the Taylor series, second degree term goes. So you will get 0. So curvature becomes insignificant. So therefore, you have to be careful while making conclusions if this is 0. If this is happening, then somewhat we can make conclusions. Okay, so that's the thing. Next thing that we look at is what will happen if, in any of these cases, what happens if k1 equal to kappa 1 equal to kappa 2. So suppose now after this, so let's look at generally surface. Suppose you have kappa 1 equal to kappa 2 and is a constant on S. So it is kappa 1 equal to kappa 2, constant I won't say, on S. Okay, that's good. So what do you get? So this we have seen. Then in that case, then we have seen that let's call this kappa, it's easier. F1 inverse F2 is kappa times identity, that's what you get. So therefore this is, that's what the eigenvalue problem we have done. So F2 is equal to kappa times F1 that we have seen. Okay. So yes, so your hence W is equal to our Weingarten matrix is going to be F1 inverse F2, and that's equal to kappa times identity 1 0 0 1. That's good. So that's equal to kappa 0 kappa 1. Okay. But what is this? This will tell you. Then we can write normal NU. If this is A and B, then NU is equal to A sigma U plus B sigma B. So therefore this is equal to kappa times sigma U. And NB, the derivative of this is how we started. Nu is equal to A sigma U plus B sigma B, NB is equal to C sigma U plus D sigma B. Then that matrix is called the Weingarten matrix. So this we have already analyzed. So this is going to be kappa sigma B. Okay. So both are same. So let us what we want to say is that kappa, right now kappa 1 equal to kappa 2, I mean this I have to prove, that's why I did not want to assume. We can actually prove, but everywhere if you have kappa 1 equal to kappa 2, so that is what we are assuming. So then in that case, we can now talk about this. So what you do is, I have to get this guy, kappa u, kappa v, etc. I should get. So, this is better, this may work. Mu, differentiate this with respect to v. So what do you get? It will be here, kappa u, kappa v, sigma u plus kappa sigma uv, right? Now there we do the other way, so that is nvu. So what do you get here? Kappa u sigma v plus kappa sigma vu, but these two are equal if we assume sufficient differentiability. Second derivatives are continuous, that's enough. And this also are equal by again assuming sufficient differentiability, maybe third times, that's okay, assuming. So equating this, what do you get? Hence, what we get is kv sigma u is equal to ku sigma v. This happens at any point because these two are equal, so kappa is equal, and these two are equal, so these two are also going to be equal. Now look at this, sigma u and sigma v are linearly independent. So alpha times sigma u is equal to beta times sigma v, then there is only one way. Okay, since this is a beautiful argument, sigma v, this is linearly independent, probably in your language, this means you can also say kv sigma u minus this equal to 0. That means alpha times sigma u plus beta times sigma v equal to 0, but sigma u, sigma v are linearly independent, therefore alpha equal to beta equal to 0. So ku equal to 0 minus kv equal to 0 minus ku equal to 0. In other words, ku and kv are 0. Kappa u equal to kappa v equal to 0. That means kappa is, the gradient is 0. That means the function has to be identically constant. Hence, kappa is, generally this is what we say, is locally constant. But then your u, all these are defined on u, that's connected. So therefore locally constant means it must be constant. But since u is connected, kappa is a constant. So that's the first thing. So if kappa 1 equal to kappa 2 everywhere, but may not be equal, we are not saying kappa 1 equal to kappa 2 is the same value everywhere. We only said that at every place both the curvatures are identical, both the principal curvatures are identical at every point on the surface. Then now we prove that kappa 1 equal to kappa 2 is the same at every point. The two things are different. One place our assumption only says kappa 1 equal to kappa 2 at every point. But kappa 1 is a function on u and kappa 2 is a function. Okay? And we are saying kappa 1 equal to kappa 2. But now we are saying that actually kappa 1 equal to kappa 2, that means kappa 1 uv is equal to kappa 2 uv for every uv. That's all we are saying. They are same function, nothing else. But now we say that the case, there is only one thing possible, both kappa 1 and kappa 2 are constant functions. Is a constant function. That's what we are proving. It's a very strong thing. From a weak thing, we are proving a much stronger thing. So your kappa 1 and kappa 2 are, if kappa 1 and kappa 2 are same throughout, then that has to be a constant function. Okay, it's done. Now what we need is to show that, I'll be using all these. We'll show that. First let us assume, suppose kappa equal to 0. Okay? If kappa equal to 0, we expect it to be a plane. Curvature is 0 is expected to be a plane. So what do you do? The idea is, I have to show n is a constant. So how do I do? N dot sigma u. What do you get? N dot, so sigma is orthogonal to n. That's what, so, oh no, before that I have to show n equal to 0. So that's right. That is here. Here. So from this, from 1, your kappa is 0. Therefore nu equal to 0. That's equal to nb. Therefore, in that case your n is a constant. So hence n is a constant. Right. That's the first thing that you should observe. Now we will say that, of course, if the normal is a constant everywhere, then your surface has to be plane. Because even if the surface moves a little bit, curves, then the normal tilts. But here we prove n is a constant, so we only have to show that surface, this will be orthogonal to that. So all that you need is to check n dot sigma. Okay, n dot sigma u. N dot sigma u is nu dot sigma plus n dot sigma u. Nu is 0 because n is a constant, so nu is 0. Normal is always orthogonal to sigma u because sigma u is a tangent vector. So this is 0. Similarly, exactly same way, you can prove that n dot sigma v is also 0. So the function n dot sigma is a constant. And what is that constant going to be? That's the only thing. Okay, so what we have observed is that n dot sigma equal to c, a constant. It's a real number. Its derivative is 0, so it is locally constant. Is locally constant. But then again connectedness says this, it should be constant on the whole of U, all of the domain U, and hence is a constant. So n dot, I have to be careful with this n, dot sigma equal to some c. Okay, so hence sigma uv lies on the plane. What is the plane? The equation of the plane is, this is fixed, n dot x equal to c. So you can, this is the equation of a plane. If this is ABC, then ax plus by plus cz. Oh no. Okay. If this is alpha, beta, gamma, then alpha x plus beta y plus gamma z equal to c. That is the equation of the plane. I just wrote it as a standard way of writing equation of the plane. Write your, this is a constant. So write your n as alpha, beta, gamma, then this is x, y, z. So alpha x plus beta y plus gamma z equal to c. That's the equation of the plane on which this lies. So hence sigma is a plane. It's a part of a plane at least, okay? So that's the first thing. When kappa equal to 0, suppose kappa is not equal to 0. Of course, this is expected to be a circle. So it keeps, to all the directions it curves in the same manner, happens only for a sphere. So you look at the sphere, so let's try to find out. So this is your sigma uv. This is the center. And what is the radius? That 1 upon kappa is going to be the radius. Kappa is not equal to 0. So we know this, we have seen for earlier also. Right now we don't know, we only know that it has the same curving, okay? I mean the curvature, principal curvatures are same, those things, whatever we have assumed, we take. So what is going to be your n? Your n is going to be sigma uv. I mean it is inward normal, outward normal issue comes. So this positive negative is not very important for us, because if you are taking inward normal, you are going to get kappa positive. But the same sphere, if you are looking at from outside, outward normal, then you are going to get kappa negative. So therefore, normally what we do is this minus a. Okay, so that is this vector. So that is going to be length is 1 by kappa. Well, that's the radius expected. I still have not done it. I'm just trying to find out how to get the proof. Okay, so divided by the 1 by kappa. So something like this I should get. I want to get the thing that we don't know is n we know, kappa we know, sigma really we don't know. So you have to do that. So what you do is, let's move this into this. So 1 upon kappa. Okay. So this is, so n, I don't know, I mean let me try. N is equal to kappa sigma uv minus kappa a. So this is what I am getting. Okay. So this part is the unknown quantity. So let me take n minus kappa sigma uv. We'll prove that this is a constant and we are done. That constant you are going to get, this is going to be some vector b divided by kappa, you get the center. Can I do this? So let us look at this. Of course, sigma, don't worry about uv generally. Let us write down. So what do you get? This is nu minus kappa sigma u minus kappa u sigma. This is what you get. But remember, now it is easy. Yes, now I can see what is happening. Kappa u is 0 because kappa is a constant. So this goes. But we already know nu is equal to kappa sigma u. That we have already proved. So therefore this is equal to 0. And similarly, very similar way, the same way you will get nb minus kappa sigma v minus kappa v sigma. Kappa v sigma is also 0 because kappa is constant. So kappa v is 0. But nv is actually equal to kappa, sigma v we have already seen. So this is also 0. Therefore, this derivative of, ignore all these things. Of course, in a bookish proof, you don't worry all that. But if you have the geometry with you, then you don't have to worry. That's what I was telling. How do you invent the proof? So if you know that, so this vector is sigma u minus a. And the radius is expected to be 1 by k. I just used these two to get this expression. So if I show that n minus this is constant, I am done. So that's what we did. So hence n minus kappa sigma is a constant, is a locally a constant. Again the u is what is that? Your u is a connected region. So this is a constant. So let me write this equal to b is a constant. Okay, so now you can immediately write. What we do is this guy. This vector is norm constant 1. So that you take out. So what you do, you transfer this side. So this implies kappa sigma plus b is equal to n. Okay, for this universal, for every point u and b, kappa sigma uv plus b is a constant. Let us divide kappa by throughout. So sigma plus b upon kappa is equal to n upon kappa. So therefore norm of sigma, now I want to, this is your center. So you want to write it like that, then you write like this. Norm of sigma minus, this is a constant, b is a constant. So kappa is a constant. So this is a constant vector. B sigma minus this is equal to norm of that. But norm of n is 1, so that is equal to 1 upon kappa, and call this a. So therefore norm of sigma uv minus a is equal to 1 upon kappa. This is what we started with, our understanding. So this is a sphere, it is on the sphere with center a, which is nothing but a is equal to b minus b upon kappa. There is some vector in R3. So sigma uv minus a, norm of sigma uv minus a is 1 upon kappa. That means sigma is a part of a sphere of radius 1 upon kappa and center this a. But that doesn't, because b itself is somehow obtained. Okay, so sigma is a part of a sphere of radius 1 upon kappa. So that proves this. So if, I forgot to tell you, there is a name sometimes given if both the principal curvatures are equal at a point. Essentially it means, what does it mean? If you know the two principal curvatures, then the normal curvatures in every direction lies between them. This that is what is that Euler's theorem says. If Kn is the normal curvature, and if K1 is less than or kappa 1 is less than or equal to Kn less than or equal to kappa 2, where kappa 1 and kappa 2 are the principal curvatures. But remember, this is what is this Kn? Kn is the curvature of the vertical section or normal section. That means if you stand straight and look at, what you see is this curve, and that curve is exactly on the surface and it is also on the vertical plane. In fact, it doesn't move left or right on the plane, it exactly moves with the plane, with the surface. That means it tells you how the surface moves, because it's a curve that moves. That's exactly along the curve surface it moves. So therefore, this is the indicator in each direction how the curve surface moves. So therefore, and that lies between K1 and K2, kappa 1 and kappa 2. So if kappa 1 equal to kappa 2, what does it mean? In any direction, the surface moves the same way, at least close to your vicinity. They behave exactly like this. Okay, so like if you have a paraboloid, that's the best example. You look at the bottom, that point, you will see at that point both the principal curvatures are equal, and all around it moves in the same direction. A circular paraboloid, I am telling. On the other hand, if you look at other places, the curvatures may not be same. In some direction it is more, the other direction it may be less. So they are not good. It's exactly at one point. I mean, you can check this curve, z equal to x square plus y square at the point 0, 0, 0. This surface will have both the curvatures going to be same, and you can check that. And what is the parameterization for this? Standard root also would do. xy root of z equal to x square plus y square. No, root and null if you take, then you are going to get cone. So this is exactly the surface, and this surface exactly at the origin 0, 0, 0, you will have this behavior, but not everywhere else. So there are points at which it can happen, but if it happens everywhere, then it must be either a planar piece or a spherical piece. But other places this can happen. So that is the indicator of this. Okay, if they are equal means behaves exactly same way. The panorama is same, wherever you turn you see exactly the same thing happens. And that's what when K1 equal to K2.